Welcome everyone this evening to our November board voting meeting. Please stand for the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This evening, before we get into our formal agenda, I do want to spend a little bit of time discussing and recognizing those board members who will be leaving the district in December. We have an unprecedented 5 board members who will be leaving, and we want to take this time to say a few things about these folks and present them with a small token of appreciation. If we could. First, Ann Hearing. Ann has been on our board since 2016. Ann's been on our Business Functions Committee as our chairperson. She's a member of our Student Functions Committee. She's been on the BCTC Joint Operating Committee as our rep. We want to thank Ann for her service to the district. Thank you, Ann. Yes, there is a card.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a lifetime pass for that person and guests for all events in the district.
Before he said there was a car.
No,
I thought you just mentioned it today.
I haven't been here long enough.
I'll offer those people on the board for 34 years or more.
You got a car. You said 34 years. Right, yeah, 30.
You get a car, you have to pay for it, but
He
you
gets
get
a 34-year-old Volkswagen.
Mr. Russ Diesinger has been on our board for 16 years, since 2002. He's been a member of several committees, the Policy Committee, Legislative Liaison, Student Functions Committee, past chairperson of the Curriculum Committee, past member of the Business Functions and Personnel Committee, and again, I want to thank you, Russ, for your many years of service. It's been a pleasure working with you. Mr. Bob Quinter. Mr. Quinter has been a board member for 16 years, since 2002. He's been a board president from 2012 to 2016. As a member of our Athletic Committee, Student Functions Committee, Technology Committee, current chairperson of the Curriculum Committee. He served on the BCIU Board of Directors since 2004. And he's also served as our township member liaison as part of the township strategic planning committee. So a lot of work. Thank you, Mr. Quinter, for all your Mrs. Carol Kutcher. Mrs. Kutcher has been on our board since 1996. That's 21 years. Carol has served in many capacities. She's been the chair of the Student Functions Committee since 2002, as far as we know, possibly longer. She's previously served on and been chairperson of the District Growth and Development Committee, member of the Curriculum Committee, and past legislative liaison, as well as all the work, Carol, you've done with the Education Foundation over the years. We want to thank you as well for your years of service. Finally, Dr. David Bender breaks records with 34 years of service on the board since 1983. And Dr. Bender has served as vice president in 2012, 2014, 2016 to the present. He's been chairperson of the Personnel Committee since 2001, as far as we know, possibly longer. Member of the Facilities Committee, past chairperson of the District Growth and Development Committee. He served on the Technology Committee. He served on the Executive Compensation and Evaluation Committee. And he's been the past alternate for the BCTC Joint Operating Committee. Dr. Bender, 34 years of service. I think that's not a record for the state. I understand it's 56 years, so strong. But I think you must have the record in the school district, and it's just commendable to be on the board. And I want to thank you for your years of service. Thank you. I think that's 56 years.
You missed by that.
They may not be consecutive.
Yeah, as people know, our school directors spend a lot of time each month volunteering their time in an effort to make decisions that benefit our schools and communities. We don't often have an opportunity to show our appreciation and celebrate the valuable contribution that they provide to our school district. So again, I want to thank each of you for everything you've done in helping to create Exeter as an environment where success can really happen. Thanks. Thanks so much. Okay, we're going to move on with our agenda. We have a presentation this evening from Mr. Chris Herr. He's a principal at Maley LLP, and he'll be discussing our annual audit for the 2016-17 school year. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro. Very happy to be here to present the 2017 financial statement, which just delivered today, so the copies you have might still be a little warm from the printer. Going to talk real briefly about our opinion, talk a little bit about some key number changes. I'll talk about the single audit report. If during any of that you have questions, by all means, I'd be happy to field any that you have. Our opinion on the report, which is on page 3. This is the best or the most positive opinion we can give on a financial statement. This is a clean or unmodified opinion. What that means is that the statements are in accordance with GAAP, all generally accepted accounting principles. Any applicable GASB pronouncement, Government Accounting Standards Board pronouncements, they've been implemented. There's no scope limitations on our audit. We come in with a very lengthy request list of documents and schedules and invoices, individual transaction records that we look for as part of our audit. We got everything we asked for in good order, so no issues there. And probably the most important part of that opinion is that the statement is free of any material misstatements. Just to hit on a couple number items, if you want to go back to page 18. I know what I'm going to talk briefly about net pension liability. It's not quite as bad as it looks. About 3/4 of the way down the page. And the government-wide, this is a full accrual basis of accounting. What that means is it's got all your long-term assets, all your long-term liabilities in there, your capital assets, your debt, and that net pension liability that's been recorded on there the last few years. If you look, again, about 3/4 of the way down the page, net pension liability, it's $113 million for this year. That is an increase of about $16 million from last year. You cannot look solely at that line, though. There's a couple other things that get factored into this balance sheet related to the pension. About halfway down the page, there's deferred outflow of resources header, and under that, there's a deferred outflow of resources pension activity. That's $25 million. That's effectively an asset on this balance sheet, and that increased $11 million. So even though that liability increased about 16 million, there's an offsetting asset on here that also increased by about $11 million. And then down under deferred inflows of resources, 5-6 lines up from the bottom, that also shifted a couple $1 million from last year. So the net pension liability increase itself was driven by a couple things. We're seeing these massive increases in all the school districts we do. couple things happened at the state level. One of the major assumptions they make in the PSERS plan is the rate of return on the investments in it. It used to be 7.5%. They dropped it down to 7.25%. And you would say, quarter percent, not a big deal. That's about a $6-7 million impact on the liability alone. The other thing that happened was, we saw this for, there's a 1-year look back. So on June 30, 17 school district financial, you're actually looking and reporting the PSERS liability as of June 30, 16. What we saw for June 30, 16 and 12/31/16 pension plans, they didn't perform great. They didn't necessarily lose money, but a lot of them were break even, very minimal gains. This year's been a lot better across the board. But what happens is within that pension plan each year, they have an estimate that the pension plan is going to perform so well. It's going to make $5 million. If it doesn't make $5 million in that year, if it only makes $1 million, that also increases the liability. And that also impacted your liability specifically by about another $5 or $6 million. So those two things are really what drove the increases across the board in these pension liabilities. The one thing I'll say about the investment change, that's a timing difference. Your liability could go up 1 year, the next year the pension plan overperforms, it brings your liability down. There's tremendous uncertainty in that pension liability. It's always going to be jumping up, jumping down, jumping up.
Hey, just a quick question.
Yep.
I have to sort of read this with Google open when I tell me this, because I'm not an expert in this. But just that pension liability is pretty much what we are. And you said that we had a growth in the asset. What was the basis for the asset? Where did that asset come from?
What happens is, and we're getting into some minutia of the gas piece, there are certain events where if they happen, your liability is impacted, but it doesn't necessarily hit the expense right away. It doesn't hit your P&L, your revenue expense statement right away. The difference between projected investment return and actual investment return, regardless of how that impacts the liability, that can't all run through the P&L at the same time. It essentially gets hung up on the balance sheet and amortized. The change in assumption from 7.5 to 7.25% does the same thing. Those are probably the two biggest pieces. And part of why they do that is it allows, because there's such uncertainty in those amounts, it sort of allows a smoothing of any major impacts to the pension liability over a number of years. So next year, if the plan were to overperform, your liability would come down, your deferred outflow would also come down, and we're not doing crazy things with the P&L. Kind of make sense?
Yeah, pretty much, so yeah, thank you.
Any other questions on that pension liability? That's really the only thing that I have in the government-wide statement that I wanted to kind of point out before I moved on to the general fund. I'm going to go back to page 20. Just a couple points on the general fund for this year. Cash investments is up about $4 million, and that's really driven by a decrease in receivables, a slight increase in payables. On the due from other governments line, there's about $2.8 million in the general fund this year. That's down from about $3.7 million last year. Two drivers on that. One, last year there was a $1.3 million rental subsidy receivable. It was sort of a one-off, one-time thing last year. So that went away. And the other thing that's bringing that receivable back up by about $400,000 is your PSERS rate. Your PSERS rate keeps increasing, so that 50% reimbursement you get back from the state, that's also going up. Down under liabilities, the due to other funds, $1.5 million, that's up about $900,000 from last year. That's a discretionary movement of some funds over to the capital reserve fund. And accrued salaries and benefits, that's up about $400,000. Kind of goes hand in hand with the PSERS thing I said before. That's the increase in the PSERS liability that you had due to the increase in ownership. Bottom line there under fund balance, $18.8 million this year. That's up about $1.3 million from last year. And if you go back to page 22, this is the P&L statement for the general fund. It shows revenues and expenses netting out to that $1.3 million increase. The big changes here, local revenues up about $1.4 million from last year, up to $49.2 million. That's essentially real estate tax revenue. There was a slight increase in EIT and a slight increase in delinquent tax revenues. Those were offset by a decrease in transfer taxes. So really when I look at it, it's essentially the real estate taxes is what caused that bump. State sources, $21.2 million, that's up about $1 million from last year. Again, it goes back to that reimbursement you're getting from the state for Social Security and retirement payments. Expenses, total expenses, $69.4 million this year. It's up about $1.1 million from last year. Works out to just about exactly 3%. You know, that's going to be your salary increases, your retirement increases, healthcare, those sorts of things. I didn't see anything that was unusual or off trend. That's really all I have on the funds and the government-wide statement. The footnote's very straightforward compared to prior years. There really was no major debt events this year. There's no major capital projects this year. We discussed the pension, which is another big chunk of your footnotes. The last thing I wanted to mention was, if you go all the way back to page 69, this is our report on findings and question costs. This is related to our single audit. Single audit is the audit we perform of the federal money that you receive, your Title I, Title II, IDEA, the Child Nutrition Cluster monies. This year we audited the IDEA grant. That was, again, a clean, unmodified opinion on that program. I did want to point out one thing, though. If you look at the 3-4 lines down on page 69, significant deficiency is identified. We have a yes there. And if you go to the next page, page 70, one of the things I did this year, which we hadn't done in the past, is I actually went over to the high school in July and did a visual sort of check test of the food service inventory. When I was over there, I did a sample of about 15 million items. Out of that sample, I had 3 errors. So that's fairly, significant. If it was 1, I would have said, it's a fluke and not worried about it. But 3 out of 20 is a fairly high percentage. What I found when I was going through that, a few different things happening there with the inventory. I had one item that I looked at, breakfast bars, basic breakfast bars. The count on the inventory was 7. There was actually 11 cases there. So the inventory was understated in that case. There was another item I looked at, which was cases of cinnamon rolls. The count was right, but it was the wrong line item. It was one brand of cinnamon rolls versus another brand of cinnamon rolls, and I know you go, well, it doesn't really matter. The cases that were attributed to 11 were $12 a case. It should have been $28 a case. So there's a pretty significant, from an analytical standpoint, sampling standpoint, it's an understatement of about $150. Once we extrapolate that to the population, it's a little higher. The other item we saw was jelly. There was a case of 3-ounce jellies and 6-ounce jellies. There was 8 of one and 2 of the other. But they should have been switched. Should have been 2 of the one, not 8, and 8 of the other, not 2. So various things happening over there with the inventory. Given the number we had, I thought it was at least worth disclosing that in the financial statement. And the page after that is a corrective action plan that Ann wrote up related to that, looking at corrective action from June 1st, 2018. So that's all I have. I'd be happy to field any questions if you have any.
I just had a couple of things.
Sure.
Jellygate notwithstanding. We'll preserve that for So just a couple of things.
Sure.
On page 14, there's something that alludes to, we paid a portion of the termination amount to Wells Fargo Bank with respect to the termination of the swap agreement. We know that we had an issue a couple of years ago where we, in aggregate, took like a $6.5 million loss on the swap. And I was just wondering if there was any, what that issue was. On page 14, midway down of the body copy there.
And I don't know if you want to field that one.
I have been including this disclosure in the management's discussion and analysis ever since the swaption was terminated in 2012. So I include recent information, but I'm not sure what your question is. I mean, it was the board's desire to get out of the swaption that would have forced them to issue variable rate debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically issued, refunded some non-taxable, and then there was a portion that was taxable because of how the whole swaption was written many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really just an ongoing disclosure. The language has been there since 2012, just to let the reader understand, well, what these recent issues, 2012A, 2012B, really what they were all about. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll recall, a couple of years ago when Dr. Tamura was on the board, he had concerns about a $6.5 million loss related to the termination of the swap. And it just says here that we paid a portion of the termination amount. I was just wondering, what was the portion of that termination amount that we paid? Is that relevant to this statement, or does that harken back to 2 years ago?
It's not relevant to this statement. That relates to, when it was actually terminated.
Okay.
This is just the same language that's been in there for the past 3 years, and it's probably something that it's time to fall off of the management's discussion and analysis, but I really just try and disclose as much, because when you're looking at the general obligation bonds, you really just want to obviously be as transparent as possible. So if you look at 2012B, it's down, that was the taxable portion, down to 4.7 million. And if you remember, RDC at the time, they presented the analysis, really over the long term, there wasn't that amount of loss. I mean, having to issue variable rate debt, we would have been in a worse position if we followed through on this swaption.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, because I do recall that even though that was a $6.5 million loss, we had gotten yield out of that to become several $1 million as well.
Correct.
So it probably netted out to be a zero.
And I don't have those
Okay.
numbers with me.
But this is not as
This is
related
nothing
to
new.
that.
This is
Got it.
nothing new. I really disclose recent issue activity.
Okay, great, thank you. Just a couple of other things. Just a couple of things to note. And by the way, I thought the report was very well done because I actually understood most of it, which is really an accomplishment on your end to get me to understand that.
Thanks.
But I think we should note that our enrollment is down about 12.3% since 2001, 2002 to about 3869. So we're right now at enrollment at the same level in going into 18-19 as we were in 01 and 02. Another thing I think that jumped out in the report, and I know we've talked about that a lot this year, is that we've had a 70% increase in special ed expenditures in the last 10 years, and I don't think anybody sees that abating, despite the fact that there was a great presentation last week by the special ed folks to try to address how we're going to try to mitigate or it's not so much as cut the costs as reduce the amount of how much it increases. That they say in Washington is how they talk about it, Russ. But I think that's an important number to understand. The other thing, Chris, has to do with the, you talked about the general fund, but when we look at our combined fund balances, which also includes capital funds, we have about close to $29 million, correct? Sitting in both. If you go to page, I think it's on page 12, and we take into consideration both the general fund and the capital reserve funds, both restricted and assigned.
Fund balance, yeah, it's about $29 million. Yep.
And the PSERS rate, of course, we've seen that grow, and that's spelled out in here. As well. So that was, I just wanted to point out a couple of those things that I noticed in going through the report. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? All right, thanks for the opportunity and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a report from Dr. Joe Sloffer, principal at Jackson Walt Elementary School. Mr. Sloffer.
Turn that evening. Joe, you gotta turn it on.
Dr. Sloffer.
Just push the button to turn the green. Should have left the directions there for you.
5 degrees.
What is it? You're on.
Okay, first off, I want to say thank you for all the service for the board members who are leaving. You know, they're working 34 years for no pay. That's pretty good. That's quite an accomplishment for all of you. I thank you. You've always been, the people on this board that are leaving have always been pro-education and always doing things for the right things for kids. And I thought through my career here, which is winding down as well, that I'm happy to see the way you litigated things and talked about things and looked at things that were the best for kids always. And it was nothing other than that for our district, and all of us are appreciative of that. So thank you for your years of service and for the way you conducted your years of service. So I thank you. So Jackson Walt is growing. We added 34 students, which is kind of a lot after declining enrollment. We added a few new classrooms. We had to add a kindergarten and a 3rd grade classroom, and next year will be a 1st grade and a 4th grade because those numbers haven't declined at all. So we need to keep that going. We also added a verbal behavior classroom, which has been quite interesting. So we have students who are nonverbal in a, I think 6 students in that classroom, and it's really a different setting. It's really different to what I know. It's a different thing when you have kids who aren't verbal and you're trying to communicate with them. It's quite a challenge. But there's been some growing pains, but it's going better. After the first week, I didn't know if the teacher was coming back, to be honest with you. But as of now, you know, they're starting to get things settled. We get a lot of support from Patan, a lot of support from the IU, a lot of support from some other behavior specialists that are helping us get through it, and it's coming along. Our PSSA scores and SPP scores, I'm thrilled with. Our school continues to do very well. I know it's not about scores, but in the end result, they're in the papers. So we can talk about it not being important, but at the end, they're in the paper. And when it's next to it, that's my name next to it as well. So I'm very happy with what we're doing. I'm very happy with our 4th grade scores in as far as PVAS. All of our teachers were in the dark blue, which is the highest they can get, showing significant evidence that they're surpassing all the benchmarks and standards set forth by the state. Our scores of 77.4, 77.2 the last couple of years, and before were even higher, are real steady. And quite frankly, our clientele continues to change. Sometimes I'm just amazed at what we do. I'm amazed at you know, when you lose some parent support at home, you lose some things along the way, and our teachers are finding a way to keep it going, and I just couldn't be more pleased with them. Can you hear me? So I'm going to close. I'm good. Spanish club. We have Spanish club again next year. really fun with the kids. And we have high school students who come in here, come to our building twice a month for an hour, and they work teaching the kids greetings and different kind of things in Spanish. And we had kindergarten through 4th grade students. And at first we thought about just having 4th graders in there, and we wound up inviting everyone, and the first 25 people that applied were in the program. And now, like, there are people who are jockeying for position to try to get in there. It was fun for the kids. They did a super job. The high school students did a super job, and we're going to continue that again this year. We had our first safety drill, and through the years of doing this, we've come to the conclusion that we can't flee, and yet we have places that we could. We've come down to a hybrid model where we do try to get some classrooms out, and we have some places where we could flee that makes sense, and we have places that we're just going to lock down. So it's kind of different than, I guess, we had the flee model or you have the lockdown model. We kind of started something that just works for us. We still have some room to grow, and every year we work with our 1st grade class leaving the cafeteria, because that's a hot spot. If someone were to come into school in the middle of the day, it's the most we have we have 80, 90, 100 children at a time, and that's a spot where they're used to being noisy. It's the cafeteria. They should be able to talk and have fun with their friends. To try to get them to quietly leave that no one knows they're in there is quite a trick. So we work with our 1st grade, and we did it not too long ago, and we're going to continue to do just our 1st grade, just from the cafeteria. And I think, like, other than that, our lockdown areas and the classrooms that we do have flee do a super job. So we're kind of refining that down to where we think that that's our last big area of concern. Our observations I continue to do. I have 4 completed this year, and like I said, I may have talked myself into a committee. And but since then, I've been talking with my colleagues about how we've done, how people do it, and maybe we need to find some little shortcuts to go along the way, so it's not that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth that takes 3 weeks until we get an evaluation complete. So we're going to look to take some shortcuts and to have more discussion as to back and forth. Instead of sending something, getting back, and I comment and I send it and you send it back, more meeting face to face, which is more beneficial to everyone. So that's something that's looking positive. The HVAC, not so much. That system is, last week we had 12 classrooms. And listen, Al's doing a great job. Rob's doing a great job getting people there. It's like chasing a bubble around. There's rooms that, it's hard. We had rooms last week that were 52 degrees in a classroom. Kids have to put their coats on in there to be in school. I've been complaining about this, and you know me for the years. I don't come to the school board and ask for things. I'm just kind of keeping it out in front. Something needs to be done there. This stuff is in disrepair. It's old, and it's ongoing. On a happier note, we had our turkey raffle today. Mrs. Pija was in attendance today. It's a super fun event for the kids, and it grows every year, and we haven't lost the enthusiasm. The kids are still excited for it as they were the first time we did it 18 years ago. And so we gave away 18 turkeys today that cost, I think, $58. For $58, we spread a lot of goodwill today. Parents coming in to pick up the turkeys, little kids fighting to get that turkey on the bus, kindergarten kids put it in their book bag. I mean, the whole thing is just hilarious. And it's 35 minutes of the kids just pumped up and going and having fun. And we need to see that. No matter what we do in the end, it's K4. They're little kids. We need to have fun in there. And we had a fun day today, and we try to have those throughout the year. I got a mom that stopped me today and said, I was going to go buy a turkey tomorrow, but my child won the turkey today, and she said that's going to be on our Thanksgiving table. And you can't spread much better will than that for $55, $58, whatever it was. So that was fun. Mrs. Pija was in there, and how was it, Mrs. Pija?
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. The kids, when they knew the turkeys were coming, they started turkeys. and I mean, the one funny thing was though, Dr. Swaffer took all these kids, they were saying they were getting $100, And I said, all these kids, they're lined the whole length of the stage, and I was thinking, gee, someone's getting $100, and here's $100 to the school store.
The school store, which is it's about $1 to a penny. So it's about
But it was,
$100 is about $1. So.
those children that were up there, they were so thrilled that they were going up there and getting these $100, and I thought, wow, I wonder where Dr. Slaughter gets all this money from.
Someone's getting it from you, Pat. Come on, your retirement.
If we can just jump back to the HVAC for a second.
Sure.
When we look at the KCBA document, we do have critical need, as pointed out in this document, for close to $1 million for HVAC stuff in fiscal year 18-19. So is that something that we'll be moving forward this summer? Okay.
Yes, there's KCBA is helping us write the specifications.
They'll be coming in front of the board probably January, February latest, because we have to get RFPs out.
Great. So,
Thank you, and thank you for support on that. It really is a situation where I spend a lot of time doing that. When I'm in my retirement years, I'll be doing HVAC. Our holiday concert's coming back again this year after years of hiatus, which I'm thrilled for. We have it the middle of the week on a Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we put 700 people in the gym. It's got to be important, or 700 people wouldn't be there. We have little kids on the risers. They sing their songs. They do their things. It's right before the holidays. Again, it's public relations. It's about people coming in and getting good things from our school. It's about people seeing that, they're not so worried every day how much time they spend on that. They also want to know that the kids are, having a good time at school. I tell them all the time, did you learn today? They go, yeah. I go, did you have fun today? They go, yeah. I go, that's all we offer. Fun and learning, that's all we have. The rest of the stuff is on you. So our concert's coming back, and our teachers are thrilled about that as well. Our school climate, this is always the same thing I put in our building report all the time. I think it's critical, and I see more and more, all of a sudden now, all these in-services are coming out about how important school climate is in schools. Like, how this is like, come to get in service for this, administrators, come to in service about this. Goodness gracious, it's an old thing you have to know for a long time. And people are happy, people enjoy what they're doing, people do a good job. Kids come to school, they're happy, they enjoy where they're at, they do a good job. So it's kind of one begets the other. Finally, I just want to do a little shout out to the APT. We have people that work in all of our buildings who work tirelessly. Much like you guys come here and give me your time, we have people in a building, I'm not kidding, 30 hours a week. People come in, are copying, making copies, doing this, organizing that. It's really a testament to their dedication for our school. Raising money, whatever we ask them for, they'll get us to some limit, whatever. They have a budget as well. Pay for all of our field trips for the kids, have fun nights for the kids, gingerbread nights and bingo nights and fall festivals and all kind of things for the children. Whatever we ask them for, they're there for us all the time, and they work tirelessly. So, does anyone have any questions? Yes, Mr. Brady.
So when our HVAC system fails, we, other than telling the children to put on your warmest coat, your gloves, your mittens, and your hats, your scarves, and whatever, are there any places we can offer, like, other classroom spaces?
We'll do that. We have moved to other classrooms that, but Al's usually, we call, if we have that kind of level of need, he'll be right over there, and we'll try to get as many started as we could and do some things. When it's hot, we move fans around, we do different kind of things, because that's the situation as well. There was a room the other day that was blowing 107 degrees. I was like, I never saw that one before. And I have that thing on my desk right next to my phone. It's like the HVAC gun. I can check temperatures. It was 107. So it's like different things we have to do, but we don't have enough rooms to move people around.
Hopefully our repairs will address this as we go into
I'll be happy. I'll be happy.
Better for the money we're going to spend on it.
It's like there's so many things in each situation. You go into a classroom, there are so many things that could be causing that thing to be blowing cold air. It's a pneumatic system. It could be the thermostat that needs to be calibrated. It could be the set switch that needs to be fixed. I should know all this stuff, but I don't. It could be the situation of the outside temperature varies. It's how far the dampers are open. It's the tubing is all plastic and it's 30 years old and has cracks and we're losing pressure in places. And the whole thing runs on pressure. there are things that fail in there. I forgot what the name of them are. It's like little canisters. There's 7 of them in each unit. One of them fails, you have a problem. And although the replacement parts are expensive, they're looking at $250 for that, $300 for that, this, and that, and it's like chasing a bubble. There's definitely dirt in the line. The water that sometimes we drain out of the system looks more like yoo-hoo than it looks like water. I mean, we had a broken pipe that was sucking. There's pressure valves. There's things that need to be replaced in there. That's for sure. The system is in disrepair at many levels.
How's our math program going this year?
Math,
Yeah.
great.
Now, we're a couple year or two into the.
I've always been a big proponent of the math. I think the math is really, I think we need more support. We have kids at the lower end, and we have kids who are struggling that we need to support them with more, and we kind of haven't been, maybe as to the best of our ability up until now. We're trying to maintain the fidelity of the program, but I think we need to offer some other programs and some support for kids who are on the low end. But for the children who are the majority of the students, are high flyers, everyone, it challenges them. And the things that they do, we've seen them over the years really know the language of the program, know the vocabulary, and they learn. Like each year the teachers are saying how much more the kids knew than the kids the year before because of going through the program. Like when we started their first year, they're in 4th grade, the assumption was they had it for 3 years or 4 years. They didn't. So now we're getting children who are in 4th grade who had it now for 3 years. So we're definitely seeing, the benefits of that. I personally like it. I think it's really a challenge for our students. I think they find ways to think mathematically. There are still some concerns with number fluency, fact fluency. I kind of don't agree with how they do that. I think that maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think if someone asks you 7 times 6, you have to know it's 42. You should know what 7 times 4 is, and that happens to be the one you know, and then you can figure out what 7 times 6 is. Because now you're doing other kind of math computations, and now you're going to throw that wrinkle into it. It's like adding 2 more steps to the problem. You get to long division, you get to different kind of situations in 4th grade. I think it's a struggle. So there are some things to be concerned about, but I also think that in the long run, our children are thinking very mathematically, much more than they did before when we gave them one algorithm. Okay, you go home and practice it, and now you come back on Friday and we'll give you a test on it. But they didn't know how to apply it, how to use other ways finding other ways to solve problems. I think we've really expanded the math intelligence of our students, but I think there's some room for improvement.
With the children who are having some challenges, what would you suggest we could add for more support for those children?
Well, that's a hard one. I mean, we have some students depending at what level of support they're at. We have aides that push into the classroom to support them, and that's been going well. We had some grade levels who changed when they have math so that we could utilize our aides in all of those classrooms, which is a great, that's great support. That's a great use for our school. I think we need some curriculum, something a little bit more structured, something a little bit more like we used to kind of do math. We need something maybe some alternative programs that could support. I'm talking about handfuls of kids. I'm not talking about 20%. We have some students who are really struggling with the program as we present it.
We currently have a math software program that we're putting through this year. That'll be supporting all students, as well as, we're piloting a curriculum that would be to support the students that Dr. Schwartz cited.
Just specifically those students.
Well, it'll be useful for all students though as well, because it is more of what he's talking about, more of what we used to call drill and kill.
Are we looking at replacing these ones
No.
again, or just more backup?
It's a supplemental program. What we have is what we like.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we do. I mentioned Education City. Actually, we piloted last year at Jacksonville, and this year it's gone district-wide, and it's a computer-based program, and we've had a lot of success with it. And the students are getting better at that as well. Just give them a chance. Give them the computer and give them a chance. They know how to do it.
Could you explain the pie chart at the bottom of
Yeah, the pie chart I just put down is the dark blue is the highest that, like our teachers all get graded on PVAS, like how well you taught your students over the time that you've had them in PSSA, how well the evidence is that you surpassed the standards and expectations of the state, or if you were on level with what you should do in a year's worth of school. You know, have you exceeded that? Have you not met those standards? So I just put that into the dark blue, which is, this is our district right here. This is, these are a number of teachers that everyone in the high school on down that has PBAS scores are in here. And all of our teachers were in the dark blue, which is the highest one, and I just wanted to give them some props. They did a great job.
Thanks.
We have a couple of other items that fall under the KCBA capital improvement plan for this year related to security for Jackson Wall Plumbing in 17-18. Are those items that will be...
We're getting it as well.
Thank you.
Are you aware of the program? Before we throw it on the top.
Am I aware?
Of what Mr. Trevino is talking about?
Well, I know, I think when you're talking about capital projects, is it?
The stuff obviously earlier related to HVAC. This is about roughly $200,000 of security improvements, including dividing the
Right.
vestibule and the lobby.
Adding a second set of doors that would be locked as well. And is there, I don't know if there's, I think Ann said something about, I know I brought doors into our outside doors are in disrepair as well.
Yes.
I'm not looking for like, you know, I'm not trying to beautify it, I'm just saying, hey, that doors are looking a little shabby, let's get some new ones. I'm talking about doors that don't close, doors that we don't have alarms to right now, that haven't been alarmed for, I don't know, a long time. The people from Syntex come in and they're going to do something, they're ordering a panel, they're doing this and that, and I know they keep telling us things that I don't. I know for a fact right now that school could be open and the alarm won't show that it's open at about 6 different places, which is a little bit alarming, yeah. Custodians have to go at night and make sure before they code out of the building that everything's secure everywhere. It should be saying to us on panel, you know, door in the gym is ajar, kitchen door, kitchen exit is ajar. It doesn't say anything.
It's all slated for this year's budget, and that's part of the...
I mean, that's a simple fix. I mean, but the doors are part of it. The sensors aren't matching up anymore. The doors aren't aligned anymore. Some of them they're in bad shape. Mr. Dissinger.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, and it has to do with your Turkey Day, but probably in broader scope. First of all, I want to thank you for your comments about the board being very, kid-oriented, and I would say the same thing about you. I think you've successfully built an amazing climate in your building, and I think the school climate is an extremely important element to having a successful school. Every piece of research I've ever read says that climate in a school building has nothing to do with the ground swell, it's from the top down. And I would like to commend you on that climate and what that does to add to the learning environment, and hopefully we can take care of all the physical stuff and make it so it's not 52 degrees or on, what did you say, 101?
One was 107.
That's amazing. The highest I'd ever seen was 96.
It was a new record for us.
But no, seriously, Jeff, thank you very much for your work.
You know, thank you for your comments, but it's something like all of us, it's part of all of us. It's what we do. It's something whenever I'm looking to hire someone, I'm looking to replace someone, I'm looking for people who fit into that culture, people, that are going to work, because when the climate is good, they work together. And those are the teams that win. You look at any sports team, you have to work together or success is difficult. Thank you for your comments. That was very nice of you.
Thanks, Dr. Schleifer.
Thank you.
The next section of the agenda are public comments and opportunity for members of the community to bring to the board any questions or concerns either related to items on our agenda or anything that might be relevant to the school report. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 5, school board action. I move that the Board of School Directors authorize the district administration to submit the district's comprehensive plan to the Pennsylvania Department of Education by the end of November 2017. And this plan will span the period of July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2021.
Thanks.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, minutes. 6A, I move the board approve the special board meeting minutes from October 2nd, 2017.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6B, I move the board approve the board workshop minutes from October 10th, 2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6C, board voting minutes of October 17th. I move that the board approve these minutes from October 17th, board voting minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, treasurer's report. Mrs. Baker.
I move that the Exeter Township School District's financial statements for the period ending at 10/31/2017. The following financial statements are attached. Year-to-date summary of revenue and expenditures, all funds, statement of assets, liabilities, and fund balances, payroll and fringe benefit summary, investment statements, and student activity and athletic fund. I move that we accept these statements.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I did have one question concerning, we had the board services, and it says that we had budgeted $102,384, and we have now spent 77.20%. And can you give us an idea of what we spent all these services on?
The board services, it would include our annual fee to PSBA for the various, our membership, as well as, the support of policy, division, administrative regulations. There are some funds that were spent on the leadership conference that took place in October. Under board services, we also pay some fees to paying agents, so that's generally the largest portion. And I don't have it open. That is the largest portion.
So you think we won't go over budget by the end of the year?
Well, some of the invoicing for fees would occur earlier in the year. So, no, we should not go the over budget.
Okay, thank you.
Item 8, board policies. We continue with our process of revising district policy through the assistance of PSBA and their sample policies. On the agenda this evening, we have 6 policies for second reading, which is the final approval stage, and we have 6 policies for first reading. I move that we approve these 12 policies.
Second.
The motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So I report to business functions. Item 9, Dr. Heron.
Item 9A, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorize the advertising for bids for the following transportation vehicles for the 2018-19 school year. 3 each 77-passenger buses and 1 each 54-passenger bus.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opposed?
Opposed. Mike and I was opposed.
We had two. Two opposed.
I think so. Mike, you're opposed, right?
Motion carries.
Item 9B, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the purchase of a 2018 Chevrolet Express 10-passenger van from Bob Fisher Chevy at a cost of $36,750. The price is per CoStar's contract for passenger vehicles number 026-023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can I ask a question? I guess, Mrs. Geis, what is the purpose behind buying this new vehicle? Because we're replacing a vehicle, because there's a need for additional vehicle to move children from point to point, or?
There's a need for an additional van, specifically for the curriculum in the special ed courses at the high school, where they go out into the community. It's a life skills program. Right now, they're using one van. Ideally, they want two. But we also have additional demands for athletics. So, and we do have situations, increasing situations of homeless students. And there have been occasions where we haven't had enough vans to transport these students. So there is a real need in those three areas.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One opposed? Motion carries.
Item 9C, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors ratify a student transportation service contract with the New Roads Transportation, Inc. to provide student bus service to one non-public daily route for the period of November 13, 2017 through June 8, 2018 at a cost of $290 per day.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do we think this starts us down a slippery slope in terms of our bus service? And we've been wrestling with this issue of the recruitment of bus drivers for a long time. And I'm just wondering if there's not a special committee of the board that should be created, or something should be done to try to come up with something that's out of the box to try to address the issue. Or I know that people in the community are opposed to outsourcing, but this thing might just outsource on its own if we don't figure out some way to address our inability to attract and retain bus drivers. I'm just wondering if there's something else we can do.
We have been looking at what other BCIs, specifically what they've done, and I've shared it with Marcy and Dr. Phillips, and we probably will have to come to the board about additional incentives. We do have a bargaining unit, so sometimes you have to work through that. So we are definitely trying to move ahead on that.
Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye. I'm sorry, go ahead, Connie.
I would just say I think it is very important that we keep our own bus services and that we do whatever we need to do to attract, people to come here and be bus drivers. I know it might be very difficult because sometimes they work in the morning and then they have off so much, and they work in the afternoon, I guess. But whatever we need to do, as we can see with this roads, it's far more expensive to privatize the buses. And this is the only beginning. That's, down the road would be, all you have to do is ask some school districts that have already done it already. So I would hope we'll see we can incentivize somehow to get these bus driver people to come here. We do pay for them to learn and everything.
The hours per week.
Trainings.
Does any of the VOTEX, do any of them have bus driver training?
No, they do truck training.
Yeah.
They're more diesel.
I'm sorry?
They don't do bus driver training, no.
Oh, they don't do bus driver. So where do they get the bus driver training from?
We go through, I know Rick does a portion of it.
Right, there's classroom training, which the IU holds classroom training, and then we actually, some of our staff members do the actual training on the bus itself. And then they obviously go back for the actual test, and those tests are given at the IU. And there's also physical requirements. It's a long process.
So say someone was interested that we knew, how long from the time they're interested till the time they become certified?
It's months.
I'm sorry,
It's months.
6 months?
Months.
Oh, months, maybe a couple months. You got anybody in the process?
I don't know if he's.
Sure, one just received his CDL license, and he's driving now with someone going along showing around the ropes. And we also have another woman who has her permit, so she's being trained.
Thank you. All right, Marcy, keep up the good work.
So are we convinced as part of our strategy that salary is the issue?
I don't know the salaries the issue. I think the hours going into it.
The job itself, the hours, the warning, you really don't do much in the afternoon because you gotta wait to get back to the afternoon to do your next run.
We have the same problem at the IU. And you come in at 5:30, you get on the road, you got a bunch of screaming kids in the back, you get them dropped off at their school, and then you go home and you wait until you can come back at 1:30 so that you can go back and pick up those same screaming kids who've had a bad day, and you take them home and you drop them off, and then you get paid for 4 hours in that day. You don't get paid more than 30 hours a week, so you're not drawing any benefits. And it's a crummy job. And throughout the United States, they have the same problem in attracting people and keeping people. So it's a matter of trying to stay ahead of the attrition.
What's the hourly rate paid to a bus driver who works those hours?
Starting rate is $15.50, upwards to $21.82.
So the top end of that is $21.82.
Yes. That's for the most senior. In 4 years, they get to $20 an hour, and then they receive the negotiated hourly increase after that.
Do we look at doing any sort of emergency incentives? Do we do, I know at the hospital there are times when we're short-staffed, there's a $50 shift bonus, or it's time and a half, or anything like that.
No, we're sort of bound by our business after bargaining. None of that exists there.
But again, I think as that contract, comes up for renewal, that's something that I think we're going to have to think if we decide that we're going to retain the service. Because I don't, this is my 4th year on the board, and it's gotten worse. And I know that there are smart people here, and we haven't been able to address the issue. And I think what Mr. Quinter said, I get, but people should know what the expectations are of the job coming in. They should understand that it's a split day. They should understand what they're getting paid. They should understand that they're going to be dealing with kids who are kids. So if those are factors, they probably shouldn't have taken the job in the first place. So,
But I think that's the problem. That's why they're not taking the job.
But I think also we're not providing any medical benefits because they're not falling into those.
but what I'm saying is that I realize that's not why they're taking the job, but is that, what are we going to do? We're going to stop transporting kids because somebody doesn't want kids. We're going to stop doing it on a split day. I mean, there seem to be some intractable challenges here that, the core operation is getting kids to school. That's not going to change. And if those are, they seem to be sort of insurmountable issues. And I just wonder if we're, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
They're not insurmountable. There are ways of addressing it. The IU suffered very badly at the beginning of the year, and then we pick up a few, and then they lose them. So far as offering medical coverage, then you're talking about pricing. The state does not reimburse you for that. So that's not in the formula. And what you get paid by the state for reimbursement is what you want to run the buses under. So it's not affordable. If you look at, we've got 50 drivers and you're going to pay $600, $700 each for medical insurance.
I was just asking.
DCI.
I mean, that may be a reason.
Yeah, it is not provided either.
Now, have we looked into for the senior high school possibly engaging BARDA? I mean, every major urban environment just uses public transit. Why aren't we using public transit? And have specialized charter routes. Now, you go to Philadelphia, go to Pittsburgh, go to Harrisburg, go to any major city, go to New York, go to Washington, go to Baltimore, go to Boston, major. I mean, we have a public transportation system here. I mean, discussed with them the potential of running our senior high school charter bus system, and then students have a common place they have to go to get their bus every morning. You know, be designated places in neighborhoods. This is where you get on your bus, you go to school. By the way, on the way in, you deposit your token, you get on the bus, just like everybody else in the public school system in America in every major environment, every major city. I mean, it used to cost me $1 a day to get to school and back. I mean,
This is a
not
major
uncommon.
city. This is not a very major
But it's a
city.
public environment, and at this point,
No,
we're
the
looking
majority of
for
the
creative
the majority of
solutions
the
to a problem that
township
we
is
don't
rural.
have an answer to. At this point, I would say that may be a potential creative solution.
Talk to Bart about it.
I'm asking if we did. Just throwing it out there.
No, we talked to people who specialize in bus transportation, we got bids from them, and we found out
But
that
that
more.
was bus companies, it wasn't public transit. And for a specific group of students, when they could.
Jim,
pull down your-
you're playing games.
No, looking at the whole bigger picture.
Not, you know, I haven't heard in the 4 years that I've been on the board any better of an idea. I think it's worth exploring. It might, who knows? It may
Maybe
not
not.
work, but BARDA, BARDA's an option. They run buses.
I don't know.
I'm not saying it'll work or it won't work, but if we don't look at it, then for sure it won't work. Any further discussion?
Do we have a total cost for anticipating for these particular operations to be provided by new routes for those states and franchise? What's our anticipated total cost?
Approximately 30,000.
And is this the bus that's servicing
37.
St. Catherine's and others, or is this for more of our special needs?
This is servicing a specific route that takes to the non-public schools over this side of the county, St. Card, St. Ignatius.
Okay. All in favor of this, approving this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One opposed? Motion carries.
Item 9D, it is reported that the Pennsylvania Department of Education approved Plan Concord K project refinancing and issuance of general obligation of Series 2017 to refund a portion of general obligation bond Series 2011. Reimbursable percentage of the refunded bonds is 21.77%. Item 9E, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorizes district administration to accept a proposal from APP Techs Corp. of Lancaster, PA for the senior high video surveillance system upgrade at a cost of $40,019.78. The proposal includes 2 servers, 23 replacement and new cameras, licensing and installation. Pricing is per CoStar's contract number 4400015518.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Dr.
Yeah, I have some questions about this. I think the first question is, what's the goal of the system, and how does it fit into an overall safety and security plan for the high school?
I think I can answer that for you. So, At our senior high school, we've had a camera system longer than any of the other buildings. In fact, the only other buildings are the junior high and the Watton Creek that have current camera systems. The systems that we've purchased at the high school over the years have been a series of sort of prosumer, consumer installations from sort of small organizations. You know, we'll talk to someone locally and they'll say, oh, you want to deal with this company in West Reading or this company. And so we'll get companies in and they'll provide a small solution, but when we start to scale the solution, a lot of times they can't provide the scaled solution that we need. Our senior high has about 80 plus cameras right now. And the system that we currently have is through a company in York. It's a very proprietary system. And that's part of the other game that they play, is that you get locked into a very proprietary system and you have to continue working with that vendor. The two network video recorders or servers that we're talking about here at the senior high school have effectively stopped being helpful. They're not keeping a lot of the long-term information. So when the administration has to go look for something on tape, they spend a lot of time trying to make the equipment work to actually get to that data that they need. So as part of the facility study, we're looking at a district-wide camera implementation. And a number of years back, Dr. Davies, Ken Pitts, Don Kramer, and myself sat down and we developed a series of goals, expectations, you know, bathroom entrances, intersections, doors, corridors, stair towers, key common locations where the cameras are located in. So we're trying to apply that district-wide. And what we also want to do is apply it that each building has a, you know, not a proprietary, but you know, an open platform. It's called Milestone is the name of the software. It's on state contract. If we decided we didn't like X vendor, AppStec, we could go with another vendor for Milestone that would still be able to support our infrastructure. Things that we haven't done in the past. So initially we were just looking at replacing the servers, but with the facility study, we're also looking to improve the camera quality, as well as replace some of the failing cameras. So we included a number of cameras that were incompatible with the new system, which was 7, and then another 16 that are ultimately replacing old or failing cameras within the building. So we are sort of taking, with these new servers, we will be at a sort of the same level of camera coverage as we have today, but the network video recorders, which were specifically addressed in the study, will be addressed. And then as we move forward, each building will also get a Milestone system, and all of the cameras will be integrated. So centrally, we could, you know, log into the software and get footage from any of our buildings, and not have to deal with a variety of different systems. You know, a different system at a Watt, and a different system at the junior high, and a different system at the high school.
Thank you. And the placement of the cameras and the number, did we have an expert in surveillance?
So part of finding a vendor is finding a vendor with expertise. And this company, AppStec, or Aptex, does a large number of school districts. They're doing school districts in Lancaster, they're doing Fleetwood, they do Lancaster Catholic, they're doing all of the city camera systems for Lancaster, York, Harrisburg. So they have a large sort of deployment of cameras and a lot of experience to bring to it. But part of it is determining the difference between cameras for security and cameras for safety. So our administrators are spending time, and I'm going through and looking at that criteria: intersections, bathroom entrances, stair towers, doors, to try and find places where the cameras need to go, and then to work with AppStec to figure out, is it best to put 4 cameras in a cafeteria, or do you put a fisheye camera in there, or what are some different strategies for installing it and adding cameras? So no one's telling us, hey, here's a recommendation, you need 64 cameras in this building. What we're doing is we're looking at our sort of guidelines, and we're saying, okay, here's all the intersections, here's the outside corners. We want to be able to cover the exterior of the building as well as the interior of the building. And then we're seeking proposals from Aptex for, you know, that quote. So we're relying on some of their expertise, and we're also relying on our administrative expertise as to really where in the building are there problems, you know, in stair towers. And kids tend to find where there aren't cameras. So we've learned that at the senior high. Each year we've added 16 to 20 cameras to cover all the areas that we never thought of the year previous. Or that the kids have figured out where the cameras are and they just move somewhere else. So that's how we're applying and placing the cameras.
So with that experience, I mean, what data do we have that we need this system?
Our senior high school, the experience that they've had there has been very helpful for solving a lot of issues. I know that when Dr. Davies, when we had our break-in into Watton Creek, a real helpful element of why we had these cameras, or the value of the cameras, was it was very easy for the police to see that the building was clear. If the intruder came in, the intruder left, and they were able to secure the building a lot quicker. I think it's just sort of part of doing business that you have cameras in buildings now. Do we need to have 80 or 90 cameras like the high school? Can we get away with 15, 16, 20 cameras in a building? I think that we developed the criteria, and that's how we're filling in it. So I don't know if it's a mandate to have them, but I think that there's an expectation that we have, like Dr. Schlaffer was saying, that all the doors, when they're locked, and when they're armed, and we'll know that they're armed, so that we can make sure that when we come into the building in the morning, that we know that there's no one in the building.
I think, first of all, I think the presence of the camera system can serve as a deterrent for some things. It can really stop things from happening just because they're there. My only suggestion would be that we make sure that we have the quality. I've seen cameras, the quality is beyond belief. I've seen cameras demonstrated that literally you could focus the camera, the kid's ID, if they were actually wearing IDs, you could actually read an ID number. And then I've seen cameras where you just can't make out faces.
And what's interesting is there's a lot that goes into that. And one of the things that Aptex will bring is that they're not just selling us one camera. Exterior cameras are pan, tilt, and zoom, so you can control them remotely, and you can have them move to areas, or you can have them set to automatically move to movement. Internally, in a hallway, you need cameras with a long focal range that you can get good information. And sometimes those cameras that have a long focal range don't give you a lot of detail. They give you coverage, but not detail. And then there are some cameras that you have, like if we're inside looking out a door or there are windows involved, we have the issue of wanting to see. Do we want to see what's on the other side of that window? Because there could be glare coming in. So there's a lot of variety in the cameras, and a lot of the variety is based on, that's where Aptex will say, okay, for this application, this is the type of camera that you want to use. Instead of covering this long hallway in the center of the high school with 2 cameras at each end, it would be better to have 2 cameras in the middle, so you would get more of the volume instead of everything being reach. So the quality of the cameras, they're all high definition. All the new stuff will be high definition to 1080p. The older stuff we will slowly try and work out. The analog type cameras, we'll try and work those out. But like the senior high and the junior high have analog cameras, and we'll start sort of building a program of refreshing and replacing them moving forward.
Yeah, as we move the district forward, I think all of us realize that there are some shortcomings in our concerns over the years for security. And I think now, more than ever before, I think now is the time that we need to make a commitment to move to make the kids safer by installing the kinds of security cameras that will bring us into the 21st century.
I would say no disrespect to Russ, but if cameras were a deterrent, the world's dumbest police video wouldn't be the fastest growing television show in America. And so I do have some, Joe, you might want to stay up there because I have a couple more questions around this. I think this really points out to is that we don't have anybody in charge of security in the Exeter School District. I think that's, if we're looking to comprehensively address safety and security for students, we're going to have to do more than put cameras in place. A camera is not really a deterrent. It can help you solve a problem, but we, if I'm correct in understanding this, we do not have those cameras monitored
that is correct.
all the time during the day. So while it is capturing information, it's not necessarily allowing us to really do anything with it. until after we have found that something has occurred, then we can go back, which at that point, the damage, whatever was done is done, and at least we can solve the issue. But how do we address the issue of FERPA when we're videotaping all of these students in the district?
I don't have the answer to that specifically. There are questions of placement of the cameras. So if you put cameras, and we're obviously not putting cameras in the bathrooms, but we've had a huge issue in the past with students setting fires in the bathrooms at the junior high school. So we've eliminated that problem by having a camera in the hallway that covers the areas. The information is, the access to the information is only by the administrators. At the senior high school, they do have an aide who does observe the cameras every now and then and does some other responsibilities along the area of security. But we do have, I think we have statements in our policies about cameras.
The handbooks. In the handbooks.
In the handbooks, yeah. We do probably need to spend a little bit of time looking at placement of signage. And I think that the problem with having cameras, spotty throughout the building is you're not getting a sort of a level of expectation that all public areas are saying that all public areas will be monitored. So once we move to a model where we have a lot more coverage, we do need to have some signage that the areas are, under surveillance.
I thought the issue with recording was only audio.
That is the real issue. That's the issue that recently was addressed with buses, and so we now have our bus cameras do record audio, but these cameras do not record audio. The idea again is to get video footage of it. Most of these cameras don't even have microphones, and this is just a very recent development. I guess in the last 2 years again within buses. And we had to also adjust the handbooks and communicate that.
Post signs.
Right, that they were under surveillance.
Yeah, the kind of deterrent I was talking about, and I think Joe pointed out about the fires in the bathroom. We went through the same thing when I was teaching at Reading High School. We had 31 false alarms by fire alarm schools in the first semester. When we put a camera on every fire box, stop. That's the kind of deterrence that I'm talking about. Kids start to know where they can get away with stuff and where they can't get away because they'll get caught because of the camera. And the point is, if there aren't enough cameras, then they figure out where they can get away with it, at least not being tortured.
So, do you know how long the DVR will retain the video under the new system versus the old system? Because what happens is sometimes things get delayed in being recorded, and I'm just wondering, how far back you can go to find something.
Ideally 30 days, and that is sort of the common. Once something is, you can change those settings and preserve, longer if you need to, or if you were aware of some footage you needed, you can obviously archive that off of it and network that video recorder to have it locally on maybe the administrator's laptop or on a flash drive or something like that.
Does the district require either a warrant or a subpoena to provide video, unless it's an exigent situation, something's happening right now? Do they require? Is there any policy for the collection and retaining of the video evidence?
I think most of the time the video evidence has been collected has been if there's a criminal proceeding of some sort, that something has happened, the police have been brought in, or it's an internal disciplinary. I'm not sure. In those situations, we would be cooperating with the police and providing. I would assume that if it was other than the situation was other than that, we would require. It would not be right to know does not cover.
They would have to. They would provide if it was a criminal case outside.
Okay. So, in going through the proposal itself, and by the way, it's a good proposal. And I realize I went through CoStars, but I did look through the CoStars website, and I know that Aptex lists on the website that it participates in CoStars. I couldn't find it in the CoStars.
And did solicit them for that official information, and sometimes,
Is it just this website's not updated, or?
I don't know, we did ask them. They're also, they also participate in PEPM. PEPM is specific to certain vendors, and again, our solution is going to be across multiple vendors, so we might have some Panasonic cameras and some vision cameras. So CoStars allows them the flexibility of providing the cameras that are specific to our needs without having to go through separate proposals. If they were selling against Panasonic and PEPM, we would have to have a PO for that, and then a PO for the hike vision, and a PO for all the other things broken down by contract. So you give you a copy of your first agreement number, and
It's an ITQ contract under state contracts, and CoStars actually piggybacks on that. So they are cooperating with the ITQs that and they assign a number to it.
and that gives us obviously the flexibility. So, you know, in the past we would deal with a vendor, and then we would get to a point where we would get a quote for $19,000, and it was like, well, that's great, but you know, now we're beyond our. We have to get competitive quotes, or we have to bid, and so then we have to bring in other parties, and it sort of takes away some of the flexibility. So being in contract really helps us maintain sort of the fidelity of what we're doing with devices and software, and sticking with what we want to build a sort of a common network of cameras.
So is this then setting the foundation for the priorities of cameras in the other buildings? I mean, is this?
Yeah, I'm doing site visits tomorrow with Aptex to start building up the, you know, I've gone through and I've you know, taken maps of the buildings, and we've obviously applied where we think cameras need to go. So we'll walk through, and they'll sort of give us some guidance, and then they'll build a quote based on that. So, you know, we're starting with getting the senior eye fixed. The senior eye cameras not working is really a problem, because they don't have access to that, you know, ability to go back and find issues, recent issues. So this is really a pressing issue, why we want to get them taken care of first. But, you know, like you said earlier, there is a lot of money from this project is delegated to 17-18, so we want to try and get it into this year. So we'll start working on some of the buildings probably in January.
The part in the contract that calls for licensing, I'm going to assume that that's for the software.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that software that they're using is not proprietary to Aptex, it's a...
Correct, it's called Milestone.
Okay, so I can use it if you decide that this doesn't work, or whatever, that it would be...
Oh, I have a whole list of other vendors who are trying to... And the problem is, you know, I'll talk to them and say, oh, well, we did some cameras at this district. You know, they may have done them through a construction project, you know, so they were sort of the sub of a electrical contractor, so they went and installed them, but they don't have any state contracts. So again, we're limited to sort of dealing with, you know, getting quotes or getting bids for the stuff. And we're dealing with the volume we're talking about. It would all be bidding, and the state contract is a good vehicle for us to do this. Yeah, but there are many other organizations or resellers that sell Milestone, and Aptex is one of the number one, or they may be the number one recognized reseller in the United States. They were showing us some of their sort of accolades when we were down at their facility down in Lancaster. And like I said, they do a lot of coalition cameras, and they do some really neat stuff, and they do it in a real cost-effective manner. When we reached out to some other vendors for quotes, they were really high. You know, the company that we used to deal with for phone system here is out of Allentown, CSI. They moved from the phone system to the security world, and their first quote to us was over $400,000 for, you know, it was for all of the buildings, but it was not as extensive as what we're talking about now, and their part numbers, you know, when you look at their part prices, not the best pricing that you can find for this stuff. So we also were dealing with Simplex, which is our sort of incumbent security vendor. They provide our door access and our alarms. And again, it's a support issue. They're not supporting us in the way that we feel we need to be supported when we have issues with door access or with other security-related issues. Not being able to arm our building at night because of a rogue issue that they can't figure out is something that's not acceptable. We have to arm, right? If security is the foundation of that building, not being able to arm our senior high school for a month because they can't figure out what's wrong with their system is not really acceptable.
And could you just explain CoStars? I mean, does that mean that you're getting the price is such that you don't need to bid out because you're getting the lowest possible price? Is that how that works?
Well, the CoStars program, the vendors become members of CoStars, and then they actually it provides for municipalities and districts not to have to do that. I mean, they are awarded based upon the criteria that CoStars establishes, and it's for a period of time. So it's a way to not have to bid out. Now, CoStars, you can negotiate with the vendors. I mean, they establish pricing, but you can negotiate the pricing down if you choose to.
Okay. Yeah, on our KCBA capital project list here, we do have projects in 17, 18 cameras in Jacksonville, and I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be looking to, bid that out if it's going to be with Aptex. Can we get a discount if we look at the other projects that are scheduled for 17, 18 and try to, get a more comprehensive price for those issues as well? Because I would assume that you're looking to use Aptex then for the initiatives in Jacksonville as well.
And I think the timing, like I said, our senior high stuff is really critical that we get this stuff replaced. The other buildings will, and is it just Jacksonville this year? That's.
I didn't go through everything here, but they have a critical need for HD, DVR, NVR, and 29 cameras. So, and that is budgeted for this current school year. So,
Right, Brighton Junior High, Senior High, we talked about, Lorraine, Jacksonville, are ones that they had listed.
Right.
KCBA.
But I think that the board approved the budget. So I guess all I'm saying is, I don't want to belabor the point, but if we're, can we look at this comprehensively and bid the work or get a price from CoStars and negotiate with them for all the work we get slated for 17, 18 around security cameras and DVRs and OVRs?
And we are in the process of sort of getting everything else lined up, cameras for everything else. If we want to, I think Jason, Mr. Dean or Mr. Kane would say that they have an immediate need for these camera replacements. So maybe we move forward with this and we then try and group purchase everything else. Like I said, I have looked at other quotes. I've looked at the camera part numbers, and the price is pretty fair. Will there be an economy of scale of getting more of them and having their technicians here setting up, while they're here, just being dedicated to doing it for 2 weeks instead of just a week and a week at a later time? We can certainly entertain that. But I think we're talking about long range stuff and we're talking about immediate stuff. And the senior high is really.
Immediately.
I mean, it's like HVAC. I mean, we can postpone it and band-aid it, but they are in a situation with safety and security that they are sort of in the dark.
Now, I put a priority on security, and I understand what you're saying. I do think that the district at some point should address the larger issue around safety and security, because I think it's pretty much conducted by building, and I don't know if there's an overall. I mean, who's responsible for security in the district? Like, who has that title?
We don't have a security officer.
Okay, maybe something for another day to discuss. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much. So, sideways into that, if we're looking at in our program that we're supposed to be moving ahead with security cameras in other buildings, could we just roll those earlier, which would then bring that economy of scale together? My question is, if we were to put it out to bid, are we then putting ourselves back into a position where yourself, Joe, you're working with a vendor who may not be providing the service you're looking at, that you may have identified this particular provider because of their historical, way of serving their clients?
I mean, we could specify that we have a product that was not, proprietary. And there are other products. There's a product called Salient. There are a number of big, vendors in the market. That could be a requirement of bidding. It's just, especially on such a large scale, like I said, we're going to be getting pricing here over the next probably couple of weeks for the remaining buildings. And if the wish is to sort of see if there's any, I can go back to them and say, is there any wiggle room if we do this? Is there any discount, or is there any sort of proration we can get by like through economy of scale? And we're buying 23 cameras. That's different than we're buying 230 cameras, obviously. So, I think that we lose flexibility when we go in the bidding process. And that's one of the reasons it's nice to have some of these vehicles for purchase, because, on E-rate, I have two choices when I'm purchasing E-rate. I can do the PEPA mini bid, or I can do a proposal, an RFP. And I have to send my RFP to every wireless vendor in the state, so I don't get to choose by criteria, well, half of my wireless is already this vendor. Because the way the bids work, I have to then accept the lowest vendor. But if I use the PEPA mini bid, I can qualify the bid by saying this vendor is already an incumbent vendor in the district, so I can give them extra points in my analysis of So, there's probably wording that we could use in the RFP to do that. It's just,
if you're already looking at the other locations and the volume of cameras you're going to need for this, and I know that Mr. Dean and Mr. Kane are pressing for this, but at the same time, we could say they were pressing 2 months ago.
But they have been.
Probably. If we were to, because you say you're putting all your prices together now, if we were to delay this by 2 or 3 weeks, for you to be able to then turn around to this particular vendor and say, okay, this is where your co-star is, that's 23 cameras. Now we're looking at basically a system. Is that not worth the time and investment? Otherwise, turn around and say, it's going to go out to bid. Do you want the business or not? That's my position. I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
Well, the only thing I don't see in the contract itself or the proposal is, given the time frame, there's no time frame laid out here. So what is the time?
Well, we were hoping to be in early December. They were going to start very early December, and any additional wiring or cabling that needed to be done would be done over Christmas break. That would be sort of the end. So I need to wrap up for the order. So again, putting a new system in place will get us, back in operation with our current cameras, and then replacing the other cameras and doing some cabling. The newer cameras are IP cameras, so they're Ethernet cabling instead of coaxial cabling. So there'll be some, they'll have to get in the buildings and cable. So our plan was just before Christmas to be done with the whole project.
Thanks.
All right.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
2 opposed. Motion carries.
Item 9F, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves budget transfers for the month of October 2017 in the amount of $180,631.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, Personnel Committee, Dr. Bender.
Part A, we have resignations. I move that the Board of School Directors approve or ratify the following resignations listed on the agenda for administrative staff, certificated staff, support staff, and certificated substitutes.
A motion and a second, any discussion? Hey, just can I raise an issue, because I was a little confused. There's a person who's listed as resigning and then being appointed. Is that just a different job that she's taking?
I believe so, yes. I actually had a question about that as well. I think you're seeing on,
It's Elizabeth
Pollock.
Pollock.
Yeah. So, here she is moving at Lorraine. I'm not sure about the resignation in this one.
She's taking a new job, so she's resigning as a substitute teacher and taking a part-time position. So she needs to resign that one job and then take.
Yes.
She needs to do that. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Part B, I move that the Board of School Directors approve or ratify the following appointments listed on the agenda for board position, certificated staff, support staff, certificated substitutes, guest teacher, support substitutes, and extracurricular staff.
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Part C, I move that the Board of School Directors approve or ratify the following leaves of absence listed on the agenda for certificated staff and support staff.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Part D, I move that the Board of School Directors approve or ratify the following requests for change of status listed on the agenda for support staff.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Part E, I move that the Board of School Directors approve the attached list of course requests.
Give a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Part F, I move that the Board of School Directors approve the staff conferences listed on the agenda 1 through 8.
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And Part G, I move that the Board of School Directors authorize the district administration to create the position of recording secretary.
With a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? One opposed? Motion carries.
That completes personnel.
Thanks, Dr. Bender. Student functions, Mrs. Kutcher.
Item A, just reporting the field trips within the 60-mile radius. Item B, I move that the field trips below within, sorry, excuse me. I move that the Board of Directors approve the following field trips beyond the 60-mile radius: the varsity girls lacrosse team and senior high varsity volleyball team.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes. I'm going to vote against this motion, basically for number 1. I'm opposed to a sports team missing 2 days of school for a practice for an upcoming season.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Item C, I move that the Board of Directors approves the tuition agreement between New Story Wyomissing and the Exeter Township School District Special Education Services for student 180820 beginning October 5th, 2017 through the end of 2017-18 school year. The district is not responsible for any costs for this replacement.
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item D, I move that the Board of Directors approves a contract between the Beverly Foundation and the Exeter Township School District to provide one-on-one services for student number 180648 for the 2017-18 school year at a cost of $34 an hour.
Any discussion? All in favor, sorry, go ahead.
Do we have an anticipated cost for it?
You don't have a vacancy.
Excuse me?
Oh, it's $34 an hour for the school day times the rest of the school year.
So it's per hour, per 6 hours a day.
Yeah, so 34 times 6.
$204
Times the rest of the school year.
however many, how many days will it be? 100 days? So it'll be $20,000. Will it be?
Well, the 11 days left, you'll be looking at.
Okay.
So it's for the remainder of the school year?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item E, I move that the Board of Directors approves the adoption of the settlement agreement and release to pay $48,600 in legitimate educational expenses as defined by the agreement for students 221-227 in a form acceptable to the solicitor, and to settle all claims raised by the student parents and authorize the Board of President and Secretary to execute that settlement agreement and release on behalf of the district.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item F, I move that the Board of Directors approves contract amendment number 2 to the agreement between PSA and the Exeter Township School District for the 2017-18 school year, approved July 1st, 2017, adding overnight field trip nursing services at a rate of $45 per hour for 8 hours and an on-call rate of $6 per hour for the remaining 16 hours.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item G, I move that the Board of Directors approves a contract with Dory Putnam Baker LCSW for up to $10,000 for the 2017-18 school year to provide social worker services to district students for the contract program details.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item H, just reporting student 180662, a senior, has been given permission to attend the high school per policy 202. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Kutcher. Item 12, Curriculum Program, Curriculum Committee, Mr. Quinter.
No reports.
Thanks, Mr. Quinter. Technology Committee, Mrs. Pagia.
We had our report this morning, 15 minutes. That's fine.
Thank you, Mrs. Pagia. Item 14, Berks County IU Board of Directors, Mr. Quinter.
No reports, sir.
Item 15, Athletic Committee, Mr. Lupino.
I do have a report. For those of you who are leaving the board, who have those hot little cards in your hand, our winter sports practices started on November 17th, so those seasons will be firing up. So plenty of wrestling, basketball for you guys to attend throughout the winter. So put them to good use. A number of... They are lifetime lawyers.
I'll give you another 2 years.
So I'll just do a quick rundown here. First, I'd like to acknowledge the girls' volleyball season ended with a 22-2 record. That is the best ever in Exeter School District. They won the BCIA championship. They lost both in District 3 championships in 5 games and the PIAA quarterfinals in 5 games. So it was the best of 5. They played well. Head coach Jason Grove was named Coach of the Year. Sophomore Drew Kofke was named Player of the Year. So congratulations to them. Football season ended strong, 7-4. The reason that Governor Mifflin was able to beat Harrisburg this past Saturday was that they saw that we could beat up Harrisburg on the line of scrimmage. Governor Mifflin learned from that and beat Harrisburg right on the line of the state. So, congratulations, football team. I would like to let you know, I'll break a little news here tonight, that Brandon Underkoffler, who finished his career as our quarterback, we determined today that he was the all-time leading passer in Exeter School District. So, congratulations to Brandon. And the first winter contest at home will be on Friday, December 8th and Saturday, December 9th with the boys and girls basketball tip-off tournament. Thank you, Mr. Japino. Oh, and the dugouts. I don't know if anybody's been down by the junior high, but the dugouts are looking good. I particularly am impressed with that design of the fence down there. If anybody's been down there, they had to obviously have to fence in a construction site, but it's pretty creative how they did that. But that is coming out of the ground. I stopped by and saw it today, and it's looking good. Thanks, Mr. Japino. Legislative Liaison, Township Liaison, Mr. Quinn.
I have liaised with the township, and we have an event coming up which is subject of a lot of misunderstanding. During the time I've been working with the township, we have obviously tried to work toward a mutual objective of using the taxpayers' money wisely. Several options have come up for various joint projects. We have sharing of assets already. So this is talking about the appeal to the zoning hearing board of their land use decision. It happened 2 years ago. It is coming up to court on December 4th. We did not have a time yet because the court doesn't set the time for their hearings until the Thursday before. So I will send that time out to the board. Our attorney has asked that any of us that are interested or would like to attend, he would be most happy to see you there. I would extend on his behalf the same invitation to the newly elected members and any members of the public. But most people don't understand, you know, I've been with my wife for 40 years. And I know there's been at least 3 times when she has disagreed. The first one was when I asked her to marry me, and then, you know, but other than that. Now, it is not unusual for 2 companies, 2 individuals, 2 entities to have a disagreement. That doesn't mean that I got rid of my wife after she disagreed with me those 3 times. At the same token, I believe we should continue, this board should continue to attempt to work as closely as possible with the township. They have recruited me for 1 committee so far, but so I'll be working there and I'll keep an eye out on your behalf, but I can't represent you. But anyway, here comes the zoning hearing board thing. And anyone in the gallery who would like to know the time, if you leave me your email address, I'll send you the time once it's published. The problem is that the zoning hearing board decided we could not construct a transportation facility on a Wadden campus consistent with their regulations. Our lawyer tends to disagree. And he is basing that disagreement on the fact that the garage would be a school use as defined by the public school code, rather than accessory use as defined by the zoning regs. And under the school code, the location of any school use facility is within the exclusive jurisdiction of the school district. And that since we have satisfied the requirements of the special section as defined under the zoning regulations, and we have under the school code exclusive jurisdiction, then we should be able to do what we want to. Now, the provision of the school code that we base our argument on is the location and amount of real estate required by any school district for school purposes shall be determined by the Board of School Directors of such district. Another provision which demands that we provide transportation in the case there is no public school within the proper grades in session within 2 miles by the shortest public highway of the residence of any child in the school district. Such child shall be furnished proper transportation at the expense of the school district to and from a school with the proper grades. So that's our requirement for providing the transportation, the free transportation of any student. Now, naturally, the township doesn't agree with us. That's because they aren't as smart as we are. Or, you know, I love you, Lisa. Anyway, the township asserts that we waived our right to make that argument, and that the garage is an accessory use, and because it's not permitted, because it would also be serving the other schools in the school district. Now, I pointed out during that time that means that any farmer who leases any land cannot build an implement shed on any of the leased properties. Or he can't service all of his equipment out of the main farm because he's using it on those leased properties. So it must not be an accessory use. But anyway, so everybody's going to talk about the law. Everybody's going to try to convince the judge that we are correct. And the judge will decide. If the judge decides against the township can appeal. If the judge decides against the school district can appeal. Now, in the additional consideration, everything that I've just covered is from either the official record or from the attorney. The additional consideration, in the bids that we received from the commercial busing companies, every one of them desired our facility because under the reimbursement for transport of students, if we move our school transportation site to Baumstown, we cannot afford it because of deadheading and insurance regulations. So it's absolutely essential that anybody that takes up that contract have a site here in the township within a reasonable distance to be able to provide that service. Now, we can say we worked for over a year with the township to try to come up with a reasonable solution. There's other possible solutions that have come up recently that I haven't gotten a chance to talk to them about. But the real value of this case is to establish the precedent that we have the right to decide on where a school should be placed. When you look at Whatton is so close to Jacksonville you have to wonder, why did they build it there? Well, the reason we built it there is the township said we couldn't build it anywhere else. So had we been able to execute the contract of sale we had in combination we had with the owners of some property down on Ritter Road, there were 106 students who could have walked to school every day. We would not have had to have bused them. It was flat land. We wouldn't have had to carve away the side of a mountain to build the school. So it's that is the real value to this, because hopefully we can avoid building the transport center by ourselves. And there have been very honest discussions with the township on that. But this is deciding the precedent. So any in the gallery who would like to have a copy of this, I've got some extra copies here for you. You're welcome to them. And I exhort you all to come with me to court on December 4th, and we can all have a good time, and I'll buy a beer down.
Thank you, Mr. Quinter. We appreciate your work that you've done, associated with this this issue and helping us understand it this evening as well.
Mr. Henry.
Yes. I'm sorry.
May I
didn't see it. I'm sorry.
May I address the
Please.
board, please?
Yes.
Excuse me, before you start, please, the capital budget that we have approved with KCBA, the $15+ million, that does not include the bus facility, does it? No. Thank you.
So we just heard Mr. Quinter give a commentary about the land use appeal of zoning hearing board for Exeter Township and the denial of the district's request for a special exception for the proposed bus transportation maintenance facility. Mr. Quinter's correct in his paper that both the school district and the township will appear in court on December 4th. At the Court of Common Pleas, the balance of what is said here is not true. The court is not holding the December 4th hearing solely on a zoning appeal. The hearing also concerns the appeal and a separate lawsuit that the district has filed against the township, raising the same arguments that the district raises in its zoning appeal. And as a point of clarification to Mr. Quinter's comments about the ZHB decision, I was on the ZHB at the time that this hearing occurred. On April 29th, 2015, the district filed an application for the special exception with the ZHB, requesting a special exception to build a proposed bus facility at Owatton Creek Elementary. The district intends to use the proposed bus facility to serve the transportation needs of all bus students in the district, not just students at Owatton Creek. As the basis for the request exception, the district claims exclusively, and this is all a matter of public record, that the proposed bus facility constituted an accessory use to the existing school building under 390.13C7 and 390.30 of the zoning ordinance. This was not a township argument. This was not a township application. This was the school district's application. At the hearing before the ZHB, the district argued exclusively that the proposed bus facility constituted an accessory use to the district as a whole, not to the existing building on the property. The ZHB denied the application because the district failed to establish that the proposed bus facility is an accessory use on this property, a use incidental and subordinate to the principal use, which is the provision of elementary education to Owatton students. On October 28, 2015, the district appealed the ZHB decision. One full year later, the district filed a brief abandoning its arguments that it raised unsuccessfully before the ZHB and raising the following arguments it never presented at the ZHB. One was that the proposed bus facility constituted a public school use and that the school code preempts local zoning regulations concerning related uses, as Mr. Quinter just said. Two, the township zoning ordinance does not permit school bus facilities in any zoning district. And three, the ZHB had shifted to the district the burden of proving that the proposed use was not injurious to the public safety, health, and welfare. First, the district waived these arguments by not raising them before the zoning hearing board, and that's what an appeal is. When you go before the Commonwealth judge, it's a judicial overview, review of the record, which is very clear here. It's not someplace where you go and you start a new case, which is what the district has done with this appeal. They're raising arguments that they did not raise before the DHB. Second, the school code does not preempt the use of provisions of local zoning and ordinance. To review this, you can review Northampton Area School District versus East Allen Township Board of Supervisors, Commonwealth Court 2003. Third, in a case virtually identical to this one, and local and recent, the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court has already found that the bus maintenance garage serving a school district's entire bus fleet housed on a property used principally by an elementary school is not an accessory use to the provision of elementary education at the elementary school. That would be Easton Area School District versus Palmer Township Zoning Hearing Board. Finally, the township has not zoned out the school license built to school bus maintenance facilities. A use is not zoned out if the use is permitted in at least one zoning district by special exception or condition. See FICO versus Board of Supervisors of Hempfield. The zoning ordinance here permits the proposed bus facility by right and by conditional use. In ordinances 39025B9, 39025C7, and 39071-2B. The district, in addition to the appeal, the district sued the township based on the same arguments raised in its land use appeal, the same arguments the district never raised before the ZHB. In doing so, the district attempts to obtain rulings from the court on issues. The law requires the district to first submit to the ZHB or the township's board of supervisors. The Municipal Planning Code, or the MPC, vests the ZHB with exclusive jurisdiction over substantive challenges or to the validity of any land use ordinance, except those brought before the governing body pursuant to section 609.1 and 916.1. Accordingly, to challenge the validity of a zoning ordinance, the district must either proceed before the ZHB or request a curative amendment before the Township Board of Supervisors. The district, in this case, did neither. Instead, the district argues that the court has jurisdiction because the district's preemption claim is inextricably connected to a purported challenge to the zoning ordinance. This exception, however, applies only when an ordinance containing operational regulations is substantially challenged, and you're not doing that in this case. Furthermore, the district's complaint seeks declaratory relief exclusively in Pennsylvania. A party may not overturn a decision of a zoning hearing board through or by a declaratory judgment. The district's lawsuits are futile and they are duplicative. Yet the district persists in pushing forward with two lawsuits, spending taxpayer money on legal proceedings that have no hope of success and forcing the township to spend taxpayer money defending against them. The district will gain nothing through its continued pursuit of these lawsuits. We've tried to resolve this issue. As Bob has just said, as Mr. Quinter has said, I apologize, the township has made advances to have a discussion with the school district about settling this. But these dual lawsuits that this district has filed against this township are costing the taxpayers of this township money for no reason. Thank you.
Mr. President, I would submit that's why we're going to court on December 4th, when the judge will decide whether Mrs. Vanderlaan's or my position is correct. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Lisa. Would we be able to get a copy of your comments as well?
I'll give it to you full.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to ask a question to the solicitor. Because Owatna Creek is called a green school and is very much into keeping everything green, and there were issues concerning that the Owatna Creek goes through the area of the school where the buses might be, and there could be contamination. But you know, if one of the fuels would leak through, you know, and things like that. So, do you think that because it is a green school, despite, I mean, I'm just, at least I'm not saying anything about what you were telling me, but I'm just thinking, because it is a green school, would that be different than any other school district?
Excuse me, Pat, when the building was positioned as a lead building at its level, that deals with the construction of the site, and particularly what's going on at the site, and how you go about building the building. whether it's going to be through your environmental plan, whether it's going to be through the way the building's built with using the solar panels, all the other systems. There are parts of that building that are very green. In reality, anytime you're taking virgin land and you're converting it into a construction site, you've taken the original layout of the land and you've modified it. Similar to when a farmer comes in and cuts down every tree and puts in a new field. The layout that we have provided for this is, from an engineering point of view, is utilizing the existing layout of the site from where we have the retention basins already planned out, etc. So the site was already laid out in a conceptual view that could hold X amount of more square footage of impervious area per the codes that can be developed by the DEP. So it would not injure anything considering a green school. It would just be another development that's planned into a particular piece of land from a construction viewpoint, from an engineering and construction viewpoint.
But I wanted to ask the solicitor's opinion on that, but thank you for your.
I don't know if the solicitor's an environmental expert.
No, and that's, I would defer any of those questions to your attorney who is actually handling this issue.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a reason why we're having this conversation here? Does this need to be part of the public record of this board? And is that why we're doing it? Are we going to be asked to vote to withdraw this lawsuit?
No,
I'm really very confused about why we would spend time on this.
This was
when this is scheduled for court.
Mr. Quinter's report.
It's the current status of illegal and litigation we are undergoing with the township. It's the current status of our ability to build something within the township. And it is a matter of public record, so there is no reason that I cannot inform this board what's going on.
No, Bob,
and in fact, I was requested by one board member to bring up something like that.
I wasn't questioning your report at all. What I'm questioning is the fact that we would spend time on a rebuttal that we're probably going to Commonwealth Court anyway. It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
This is going to move forward in court. Thank you, Mr. Quinter. Berks Career and Tech Center, Joint Operating Committee, Mr. Deisinger.
Yeah, I don't have anything at this time, but I would like to, I'd like to take a couple minutes. If that's okay. I have a personal reflection that I would like to share with all of you, and it's a personal reflection, but I think it's relevant to what we do here, and I'd also like to share because I think it's part of why I spent 16 years here and why I think it's so important. The reflection is my story. It's a story about a young man whose life was dramatically impacted by both his attendance and employment in a Pennsylvania public school district. When I was growing up, my family did not have a lot of financial or material wealth. There were 8 of us, and at times making ends meet was a real challenge for my parents. I had 6 older brothers and no one had graduated from high school. Education did not seem to play an important part in the life of my family. I would be the first to graduate from high school and the first to attend and graduate from college. I liked school because I was successful and had great respect for my teachers. Throughout my years of school, the teachers that I experienced played an important part in my development, both as role models and as a source of inspiration. Their examples made me realize at a very young age that there was a greater good that outweighed personal gain. They helped me to develop a real sense of right and wrong, self-worth, work ethic, and civic and national pride. Even at this phase of my life, it is not uncommon for me to reflect on my school experiences. The influence and impact of my teachers over the years became the aggregate sum of what makes me who I am today. I do not believe that mine is an unusual experience. I would point to the commonality of this experience to be the catalyst for our efforts to help to preserve this opportunity for generations to come. Our schools are not failing. Our schools will provide stability to many young lives that are in turmoil. Our schools still provide a moral compass in a world where at times moral direction is hard to recognize. Our skills still provide the skills and confidence necessary for children to surpass the economic accomplishments of their parents. In short, public schools are a source of hope, and education is still the best vehicle to transport our lives to the realization of the American dream. I will remain eternally grateful to my teachers and for the foundation that a public education provided to me as I grew into adulthood. I feel blessed for having had the opportunity to have been a part of the process as a teacher, a mentor, and a board member. Together, we must, by our actions, continue to protect this beacon of hope for the young people in our community and our Commonwealth. In the midst of all the rhetoric about property taxes and affordability, the only thing that we cannot afford is to allow this beacon of hope to go dark for future generations. The work of this board is important. The service that this school district provides as a social institution is a source of hope and is a source of inspiration to the young people of this community. And their inspiration and their future is the future of this community. We need to support public schools in every way we can. To those of you that are coming on this board, that's the responsibility. I think we need to provide this opportunity and to make sure, as Dr. Schloffer said earlier, that we keep our eye on the ball. And on the ball is the kids, their experience, and making sure that as a board, we all provide the resources that the teachers and the school district need to be successful. Thanks. And that's all. Thank you for the time to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Deisinger. Facilities Committee, Mr. Brady.
Yes, we had our most recent meeting on Wednesday, August 8th, where we visited the senior high school. At that time, besides covering upcoming projects that we were looking at, and Mr. Gribb was available to discuss some of those issues. He's an electrical engineer who's been of service to the Facilities Committee for years. In addition to that, he was also on the KCBA team. We also toured the building. We noted a few items that were maintenance, as well as maintenance that involved, well, they were just some safety issues. They were noted to Mr. Prizzuti and Mrs. Guidish. They're on work orders to be addressed, and it's my understanding they will be taken care of very shortly, and may have already had some of them taken care of. And our next board meeting will probably be next facilities meeting, not board meeting. Can't be that one. Facilities meeting will be in 2018. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Brady. Audit Committee, Mrs. Patient.
Well, we had our audit committee person here tonight, and we do have a clean audit, and I'm very thankful for the work that Ann had to do and her staff to get ready for the auditor.
Thanks, Mrs. Patient. Payment requests, Mrs. Patient.
We had a total list of payments from the general fund. It was $1,402,124.56. I move that we pay our bills.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I had one committee that's not represented here before your report, Dr. Phillips, and that's the Policy Committee. So I'd just like to report on that if I could. We've had 3 meetings with the Policy Committee. First 2 meetings were essentially presentations, one provided by Dr. David Kahn, who was an attorney with Sweet Stevens in Cass and Williams, on the topic of transgender students. The second of our presentations was on October 30th, and the presentation was by Dr. Poe, Arcadia University, primarily providing us with a deeper understanding of the transgender experience in schools. And our final meeting was on November 13th. This was a review and summary and wrap-up of our committee. It gave an opportunity for final comments and input from board members, administrators, community members, an active discussion. Obviously, many questions still remain. The transgender topics, not to go into any detail here because of the hour, but transgender topics tend to be somewhat divisive at times. However, I feel that what we heard from Mr. Kane and Mr. Flam are secondary principles regarding our current practice and the deliberation that followed by our committee suggested that we're comfortable with the current direction that the administrators have taken relative to how they're handling gender identity accommodations. And at this point right now, our committee is not suggesting any additional development of district policy until the courts or the legislature have had an opportunity to provide additional direction for the school district. And PSBA as well, as we know, has not weighed in on this either, so it tends to be premature for us to really move forward with policy. We have recommended administrative regulations be implemented with sufficient documentation to make sure that we're doing things consistently in the schools relative to transgender student issues. So that's the extent of my report, and that's the extent of the policy committee's work on that particular topic at this point. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Phillips.
Thank you, Dr. Emberg. I'd like to add my congratulations to Mr. Japinas for the athletic achievements of our fall sports, and looking forward to the same level or even better success in the winter sports. Parent conferences have been commencing this week. There have been morning as well as night sessions held for the opportunity for parents to come in and speak to the teachers. We have a slight update. There is not a definite date yet, but our new principal at Wanton Creek will be reporting no later than the end of the second week of December. We're hoping to get that as definite as possible. First round of assistant superintendent interviews will be happening the week of November 27th. Career Pathways Conference will be held November 30th. This is a countywide program that will be sending a team of Exeter Township members to attend, as well as some of our local community members and foundation members. There'll be more coming as far as the process of the Career Pathways program. It's a program set up to collaborate with all the school districts as well as all the community leaders on ways to help support our students going forward in their career endeavors. So we'll be having more talk about that after we have our conference on the 30th. I also like to report that I had a conversation with Dr. Kraft, who's the director of the BCTC programs, and he has offered to host one of our future board meetings at BCTC. He said that he would like us to come out there, see the facility, have a tour. He would have some of our Exeter Township students act as ambassadors, as well as the culinary arts program would provide a meal for the board. That is the extent of my report.
Thanks, Dr. Phillips.
Can I just ask a question or two regarding the assistant superintendent? How many candidates are you at right now?
We're done now. The search has ended November 7th. We had over 40. We're down to 10.
Okay. And the interviews on the 27th, I would assume that our personnel committee will be representing us along with Dr. Emberg.
Dr. Emberg is going to be representing, I know that. I won't be available due to it being for the day.
I won't be attending because they're during the day.
What are we doing during the day?
With the use, we tried to do it at night, and we lost most of our other members, our administrators and our teachers. They would not be able to attend at night events.
Yeah, I think what we've tried to do is to schedule it in afternoon time, if I'm not mistaken, so it goes from 2 o'clock to 4.
11 to 4.
11 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would ask why, when we have conducted these interviews at night in the past, did we suddenly lose all of our administrators and teachers who were voluntarily participating in the past?
I think that was our second interview. much, I don't think we did the first.
That would be true, that would be true of a second interview, but also the first interview, they couldn't commit to the full nights that we have to hold the events.
Yeah. And I think our intention is to conduct the second round in the evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Just one final thing. I had a note in the calendar that we would be getting an update from TIPS before the end of the year. As you all know, we did some additional funding for them late last spring, and they had promised at that point that they'd come back and give us an update as to how they did with that program. So perhaps in December we can just get an update from them.
I think that's a good idea.
Thanks.
Exiting board members, this is your final opportunity to make any additional final comments. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion for...
I have a question about these interviews. I have a question about these interviews.
You always do this to me, Pat. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I'm sorry. So there won't be any administrators? I mean, any board members here at these interviews?
Dr. Hempel.
I'll be there on behalf of the personnel committee.
Oh, just you?
I'm the only ones available during the first round.
The second,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was at least one board member there.
the second round will be a lot different.
No, I'm just making sure that there's one board member. You didn't say
Anything else, Pat?
no.
How many people will be seen in the second round?
We hope to have it down to 4 to 6.
I'll accept the motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.